Okay, this is the Fight Chatter podcast for Friday, June 27th. I'm just going to dive right into it and get into the All Heart card that was last Saturday. Main event, Bobby DeBill versus Jacob Diaz. Decent scrap. Jacob Diaz did land some good punches on Bobby DeBill, but Bobby DeBill is completely relentless. He has so much tenacity and he just wants to come forward and land his punches. Looked very good against Jacob Diaz. Very reminiscent to his Rival Series 1 fight against Eric Sanchez. Just completely took over and landed anything he wanted. He trapped Jacob Diaz in the corner in the second round, just teed off on him, landed some really nice right hands that landed flush. And Jacob Diaz didn't necessarily like the stoppage, but I was sitting there thinking maybe the referee let him go. Maybe Chet let him go a little bit longer because Jacob Diaz is a strong guy. But he did take a lot of leather in that fight, so no problem with the stoppage on that. Bobby DeBill, 2-0 in All Heart Rival Series main events. Definitely has a bright future for him. It's going to be interesting if he keeps this tenacious attitude and continues to just go out there and swing away like he does as the competition gets tougher, as he fights more experienced opponents that know how to counter that attack, know how to slow him down, go to the body, those types of things. It will definitely be interesting as Bobby DeBill develops, what he develops into. But look, he's already a main event star. Hence, he's 2-0 and as a pro, and both of his fights have been the main event. Not afraid to get out there and go to work. That was great. Sean Cross in the co-feature. Man, does that guy fight like Bernard Hopkins. Just out there, very economical, does what he needs to, throws in a few things here and there. Just kind of like the analogy of you put the frog in cold water and you slowly turn up the heat. Around the third round, it looked like he had Eric Lopez going. If he maybe had 10 or 15 seconds longer in that round, he might have gotten that stoppage. Good on Lopez to get through the round and kind of mix it up in the fourth round and go for it towards the end. But Sean looked very good in that fight. Emmanuel Gonzalez, Cruz Carbajal, that was a decent scrap. Isaiah Velasco, I'm not sure if I said his name right. My apologies if I said that incorrectly. Impressed a lot of people with his knockout of Dakota High Pine. High Pine came in, he moved around well, but as soon as he got hit with one of those accurate punches from Velasco, that he went down, and he got back up, continued fighting, was game to continue fighting, but every time he got hit flush, he went down. 3 knockdowns in that fight. In the 2 rounds that it lasted, very fun fight. Velasco, like I said, impressed greatly. Julian Ruiz, what more can you say? He did his job in that fight. He went out there, he was fighting a guy who could take a punch, take a beating, and so that's what Julian Ruiz gave him. He gave him a beating until the fight was stopped. No protest from Worthland at the stoppage. Ruiz afterwards was very gracious in his interview. By the way, there's also a Sean Cross interview out there on our channel. Check those out. Mario Gutierrez, what more can you say about him? He did a great job in that fight against the debuting Jesus Saldana. As much as Gutierrez looked like the inexperienced guy against Isaiah Rodriguez, that was kind of what happened with Jesus Saldana. He just looked like he wasn't on the same level as Gutierrez. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe that's That's not a fair analogy, but now it's on Saldana to come back and impress and basically rewrite the script like Gutierrez did. Gutierrez switching up, righty, southpaw. He fought a very disciplined, very good fight against Saldana, and good on Gutierrez. I did get the opportunity to interview Gutierrez after the fight. Unfortunately, rookie mistake. Even though I'm not a rookie, maybe it's just I've been hit in the head too many times. I accidentally had my setting on my phone to photo and not video, and here I was asking questions away, had the phone in front of him. He's answering, he's smiling. It was a very good interview. It actually came off very likable, and unfortunately it didn't record. So I am going to get out and interview Gutierrez. We were supposed to try to hook up this week. Obviously that didn't happen, so we're going to talk next week. And he's got an MMA fight coming up. Julian Ruiz mentioned that he's going to be fighting MMA this summer as well. Very good action from that card. Once again, Monica and Jason did a great job putting that card together. You would think that they've been putting these cards on for several years. It was very organized. The fights were competitive. Even the fights that were one-sided on the scorecards, or they were stoppages, they were very entertaining still, and that's a credit to the matchmaking. Very thankful for them putting these cards on, because one, it is financially expensive to put on a boxing card. Not to mention, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of work that goes into each one of these cards. Having been a co-promoter on some of these local cards, even these small local cards, there's a lot that goes involved in it. I was sitting next to Doug Gibson from Plan 9 Crunch and Utah Fight Game, and he mentioned, hey, I wonder what goes all into putting on a card like this. And I think he was looking for some insight from me, and all I said was, there's a lot. And I didn't mean that to be mean or anything. It's just like my story last week about me fighting Dennis Stouffer. There's stories behind each one of these fights. There's stories behind each one of these fighters. Fighters come in, some of them drive, some of them fly, some of them are local, some of them aren't. You got to provide meals. There's just, some of them have trouble making weight. Some of them come here and they don't have their medicals done. There's just all kinds of things that happen. And there's probably, you figure a fight card like this one, there were 6 fights. So there's 12 fighters. So there's 12 individual stories there to get to this fight night. Plus there's probably stories from the referees, from the judges, the commission. There's great stories that Jason and Monica could probably tell us behind the scenes on just this card. And so there's a lot going on, is basically where I'm going with that. And hopefully we get to talk to Monica and Jason soon about those things. They have agreed to be interviewed and come on the podcast. They have they've been great with the support of my work, Doug's work. Doug and I will probably collaborate and go out there and get an interview with them, do a podcast, and so that's something to look forward to. Another thing to look forward to is this evening, probably right around the time this thing uploads, is when Destiny McCubbin is going to be making her Power Slap debut. Wish her all the best. She was gracious enough to give us an interview as well. And also thank you to Jason to reaching out and asking her if she would give me an interview for the channel. very bright young lady. Go out there and subscribe to her channel. She's going to do great things in this sport. She was doing double duty last week, and she was being the ring announcer and doing color commentary, which all is difficult. In addition to, she came into town while she was still preparing for her Power Slap debut. She's doing her Power Slap debut tonight, and she'll probably be at UFC tomorrow trying to catch interviews and doing stuff for her channel. Her channel is very entertaining. I've checked it out. You guys should too. It's In the Corner with Destiny McCubbin. Check that out. And her Power Slap fight is not on the televised card, but don't be surprised if you see that her knockout of her opponent, when she knocks her opponent out. Don't be surprised if you see that on a recap or a video that's put out there. Very much looking forward to seeing that come out. A couple other things that are going on. Something that's going on tomorrow night over at the Fulmer Center. There's an amateur card. The address for that is 10960 South Park Road in South Jordan. Bouts are going to start at 7 o'clock. This is going to be hosted by former pro boxer and trainer Tim Carroll. For those of you who don't know this, Tim Carroll is working on being a stand-up comic. And the cool thing about this card, if you're a fan of stand-up, is there is going to be a different stand-up comedian in between each bout. And then at the end of the night, you're going to get to vote for Comic of the Night. So make sure, if you don't have any plans for tomorrow night, head out to the Fulmer Center, 10960 South Park Road in South Jordan. Make sure you get out there. Also, another thing that's happening pretty soon, on Saturday, July 5th, over at the CrossFit Gym in Clearfield, boxing trainer Pablo Padilla, he has his birthday, and they're going to have a birthday celebration. They're going to have food and drawings, merchandise, I believe, and live sparring. So that's going to be a good time as well. Make sure you get out to that if you're in the area and you don't have anything going. Wish Coach Padilla a happy birthday, and check out some live sparring and get some food. And it looks like there's going to be live music as well. So that's definitely going to be pretty cool. Go out to that. Support your local fight club, boxing clubs. Support your local fights. Go out to the amateur fights. I might be able to make it out there tomorrow night. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, another thing that's coming up is there's going to be another podcast for Plan 9 Crunch I'm going to be doing that with Doug Gibson and Dave Foley next week. So when that one drops, I'll definitely let you know. But I'm also going to put a link to the first one that the three of us did on this one. So go ahead and check that out if you've got a minute. I kind of wanted to go over, like I said, I'm going to tell some stories on this podcast. I want to tell a quick story about first time I went to Las Vegas to cover some fights. This was actually 20 years ago, in 2005, and it was a card put on by Guilty Boxing. Now, Guilty Boxing had Guilty Fight Night. They also had something you could buy that was Guilty Party Night or whatnot, where they would have a limo, they would have an entourage for you, women, some yes men looking people and they would get you reservations at nightclubs and whatnot, restaurants, and give you a tour of Las Vegas. And I want to say that the lowest package was like $2,000 all the way up to who knows, depending on how much you wanted to party. You could easily drop like $5,000 to $10,000 on something like that if you really wanted to. Definitely not something that I did. However, I remember in my youth back then, I thought, hey, that would be really cool. Nowadays, I think that I think dropping $20 over at Wendover might be a little bit too much for my blood. And I like playing slot machines. I like playing blackjack and everything. I like going gambling, being from Nevada. But nowadays, with the wife and kids and all that stuff, I can't think about those things. Anyways, back to the trip. I'm sorry. I sometimes get go off on other things. Sultan Ibragimov was the main event. Now, you might remember Sultan was the WBO heavyweight champion. He lost that title to Vladimir Klitschko. He won it from Shannon Briggs. And he was an Olympic silver medalist in 2000. So it was actually really cool to go out there and cover this fight. I'm gonna be honest. I left Nevada. I left northern Nevada, the Reno area, to go down to watch this fight card, and I timed it completely wrong. I left Fernley, Nevada, way too late. By the time I got there, it was probably around 8:30 p.m. Card had already started. Most of the fights were already done. When I got there, the semi-main event was going on. It was Timur Ibragimov, the cousin of Sultan. He was fighting. He was already in the second round of his fight. He ended up winning his fight by fourth round TKO. And then I saw Sultan fight. Sultan fought Andy Sample, knocked him out in the first round. And so I saw about 3 rounds. If I remember right, there was a walkout bout that I saw. I've got I got the link to my Boxing Talk story about behind that. Funny thing is I walked up to some other guys in press row, and I asked them, "Hey, could I get the results so I could write it in my fight report?" And they asked, "Well, who do you write for?" And I said, "Boxing Talk." And the guy slams shut his folder and says, "Forget Greg Leone." He said a not nice word instead of forget. I'll let you use your imagination for that one. And he turned around and walked away. And so then finally I found somebody in the from the commission that gave me the results so I could write my fight report. And I went as a good journalist that showed up late might do. I went and I talked to some people that were there at the fights, and I got a consensus on how some of these fights went, and I wrote up this short few paragraph article that like I said, I'm going to link to that. The cool thing about this trip is Greg Leone. Now, Greg Leone was the head guy over at Boxing Talk at the time. A couple days before I headed out, he called up Chico Corrales, Diego Chico Corrales, called him up. Diego wasn't in town, so I couldn't meet up with him. Called up Chris Bird, former heavyweight champion. He was the IBF champion at the time. Called him up. Chris agreed to meet with me. And he called up Hasim Rahman, who was getting ready to fight Monte Barrett for the WBC interim championship. And Hasim agreed to meet up with me and do some training video. Unfortunately, Chris, when I got to Las Vegas, I tried getting a hold of Chris. I couldn't get a hold of him. Talked to Greg. Greg said, "Did you call him once or did you call him several times?" I said, "Well, I called him once, left him a voicemail." He's like, No. With these guys, you really have to call him and stay on him and call him several times." And so I called Chris a few times and finally got a hold of him, and he said, unfortunately, he wasn't able to meet with me. He had some family come out of town. Now, something real quick about Chris Bird not going with this trip. I ended up actually getting to meet up with him on another trip. Anyways, his father, Joe, passed away this past week. Joe Bird had coached the Olympic team for the United States in 1992. That was the year Chris won the silver medal, and he coached Chris throughout his career. all of the birds. Tracy Bird, former women's world champion, coached all of his kids. Several other really good fighters out of Michigan are linked to Joe Bird. So our condolences to the Bird family for losing their patriarch there. Kind of, once again, like I said, sometimes I get sidetracked. Going back to the trip, I did get to meet up with Hasim Rahman, and I ended up going to Thel Torrance's gym to meet up with him. And I remember going into the gym. Now, Thel Torrance's gym is basically, and I'm not sure, I mean, you got to remember, this is 20 years ago. I don't even know if he still has this place anymore. But he had this basically a detached garage in his backyard that had a boxing ring. It had, and it had some bags set up and a whole setup for training camp. And I go in there, and this was kind of a surreal moment because I had never been to a big big time fighter training camp. I mean, Hasim had knocked out Lennox Lewis. He's a former undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. He was getting ready to fight, and he actually did beat Monte Barrett and regain the WBC heavyweight championship of the world. And here I am going in for my first time going in for a major training camp, and I go in there, and there's Hasim jumping rope. He sees me. He knows I'm coming, and he's like, "What's up, Boxing Talk? I'm here. I'm gonna give you a good show today. What's up, Boxing Talk? What's up, Greg Leone? What's up, Charles Presnell?" And I thought it was cool that he even knew my name. So he's over there jumping rope, doing everything he's supposed to. I get the camera ready. I start filming. He jumps rope for about 10 minutes, goes and does some bag work, does some mitt work with Thel Torrance, probably a good 45-minute worth of different workouts, and then he tells me we're done. I turn off the camera and everything, and then we start talking. Now, when Greg had mentioned that I was coming out, Greg mentioned that my goal was to be the first Asian heavyweight champion of the world. Now, Hasim's response was, well, he's not going to be. And, of course, I'm not. So that was some brutal honesty, but it was good. It was good. So we start talking. He says, so you're a fighter and you're going to be turning pro. And I said, yeah. And we start talking, and he asked me, can you punch? And I said, I like to think I can. So he puts his hands up, and he said, all right, give me a 1-2. So I gave him a 1-2, and he nods, and he says, yeah, you got some pop. He let me get into the ring with him. We moved around for a couple of rounds, and I got to spar with him on another occasion during this trip, and it was actually pretty cool. I mean, here I am, just an aspiring pro boxer. I had just started working back out a few months before, and here I am in Thel Torrance's gym, going a few rounds with former heavyweight and future heavyweight champion Hasim Rahman. Now, the thing about Hasim is he didn't give access to just about to anyone. In fact, I'm sure if I didn't work for Boxing Talk, I would have never gotten that. I would have never gotten that kind of access. Anyways, kind of another story about Hasim, not with me. I wrote for another website, and I was talking to the editor, and he was telling me, yeah, I don't much care for Hasim Rahman. I said, why? He's always been good to me. And he said, well, I ran into Hasim at a press conference. I walked up to him and I asked him if he minded giving me an interview. And Hasim said yes. And so I pull out my camera and I'm about to do the interview, and he pushes the camera down and says, "Yes, I do mind." And he got up and he walked away. And that's just the kind of person Hasim was. Definitely understand it. I get pushed back sometimes when I go out and ask somebody for an interview. Sometimes they look at me like, "Wait, who are you and why are you interviewing me?" And sometimes I think, you know what? I've interviewed much better fighters than you, but the other part of me, and that's kind of just, you know, I don't know. I guess that's kind of my get over yourself type thought. But I'm always, and don't get me wrong, I'm thankful for everybody who gives me access, who gives me an interview and whatnot. I'm even okay with people who say no thank you. That's fine. So if you ever see me and you don't want to be interviewed, you go ahead and say no thank you, and I won't think any less of you. I won't put you on a list of people that I don't like or anything. If I respect you enough to go up there and ask you for an interview, I have a lot of respect for you. And if you can't do it, you can't do it. Or you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. So, I mean, I don't know if in certain instances after some of my fights, and if you haven't Googled me, you'll see why. If somebody came up to me with the camera asking to interview me, I probably wouldn't have wanted to do interviews all the time either. So I definitely understand that. So don't think that if you say no, that I'm gonna ever think any down of you. But yeah, that was a great experience. Anyways, once again, going off on something totally unrelated. Anyways, so I just want to thank you guys for listening. Hopefully there's a few more of you that listen this week. I'm actually surprised on how many people listened last week to the first one, episode 2. Hope it was enjoyable for you. And we'll talk to you next week. I'm going to drop an article. By the way, Derek Hinkey, if you're listening to this, I am going to drop the article on you for the interview that you did with me a couple months ago. I'm planning on dropping that next week. I'm finishing up. I do apologize for that. In case you don't know, I do a lot of stuff. So anyways, this past month has been hectic. I've been going back to school. I've been going to school, doing my schoolwork. I've been working. And I was coaching Little League Baseball. So anyways, thank you guys for listening again, and have yourself a great weekend. Check out, look for Destiny McCubbin's, look for a video. If you see one, send it to me. Thank you.